Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and a happy Tuesday.
Beautiful.
It's another Tuesday. We are now in the week of Thanksgiving, so just to orient ourselves here, this is a pre-recorded episode, so we recorded this earlier beforehand, but in the U.S., we celebrate Happy Thanksgiving.
A happy thing. We don't celebrate just Thanksgiving. It's a
Has to be happy Thanksgiving. We get to eat turkey and stuff.
I wonder
I'm a
if we
big
can get
ham
away
guy
with
now.
Ham on Thanksgiving?
Ham on yeah. Well, we go with a larger group of people, so of course we're having turkey. But
of course,
I found this really good place, really good meat shop that does their own pigs and stuff.
Ooh. So
it's good.
We have started a tradition with our family. When the women of the family would cook a really nice turkey and have this big meal, but it was a lot of work, a lot of stress on everyone to just get all the meal and the meal prep together. We have fallen into a new pattern where we go to Mission Barbecue.
Oh,
have you heard of Mission?
Yeah.
And they have an incredible turkey roasted, slow roasted, all day long kind of thing. And it is amazing. They must get up early to do it. I don't know what they do, but you to order it beforehand. And it's super soft, very tender. It's not dried out in any way. And it's very consistently good all the time. So we got to the point of I think the women got together. The women got together and were like, if we just keep doing this, we don't have to cook turkeys for the entire day. So we're like, yeah, let's do that. So it's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. It's been going to Mission Barbecue. It's definitely probably quite pricier than getting your own turkey and do it yourself. But
the time,
everyone's happier. I'll just say that everyone's happier by doing that.
I mean, I used to be a lasagna guy myself for Thanksgiving.
For Thanksgiving, Tommy.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? When people say turkey's overrated, maybe you're overrated. You're not doing the turkey right. What I found is you salt that turkey for a day. Literally in a bath of salt. Oh, man.
Never even heard of this.
You're brining it.
Yeah, you're brining it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
eat a pickled turkey and you'll be happy.
More or less, but it basically soaks the flavor. If you want a dry turkey, just put it in the oven. Don't do anything to it. To your Seth's point, you brine the turkey. You just basically give it a bath salt. Leave it in the fridge for a day.
Give the turkey bath salts. Yeah.
That's funny. I always remember around Thanksgiving time. There's always the warnings. I guess it'd be warnings or cautions. People fry their turkeys in the deep fryer. And so every year for the last couple of years, it's been warning, don't fry your turkey. And there's all these pictures of people dropping their turkeys in that I guess have moisture on them. And they put it in the super hot oil and the oil just decides to turn into a flame. So the steam, it instantly steams the water. The water steams out. The oil turns into a mist and then it hits the flame and it turns into this fireball. And you're like, yeah, I don't think I'm ever doing that.
That sounds delicious though.
Very slow.
Drop it in
and as dry as possible.
Yeah, that was funny to me. So, anyways, this is that time of year where we get all those weird messages. I was also talking with someone in Europe. We're trying to schedule a meeting, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, in the U.S. we have Thanksgiving. We can't do that." They're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Oh yes, that's a U.S. us thing. We have a weird holiday." Okay. I keep forgetting, talking internationally, other countries don't really do our holidays. I keep getting confused. And there's other countries that do a lot more holidays than us. I feel like Canada is on a holiday every other week, it feels like to me. And they're just off a little bit.
Yeah. I'm curious if our non-North American friends have turkeys. Is that just a North American? And I know that sounds so naive. If someone's probably listening going, you idiot.
But it's not a thing. It's not a thing in other places.
No, just not Thanksgiving, just turkeys.
Oh, just eating a turkey.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm pretty sure, South America doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving, but that's okay.
All right.
Well, moving on then. So, so a couple of quick news and announcements. First news and announcement thing is, we are going to be down at. Wait a minute, we already did this, didn't we? I think this has already happened, actually. Just kidding. We had a great time at the Chicago meetup. I was going to announce it's coming,
guys.
But because thanks for having us. We appreciate it. I think it was a good meeting. I'm hoping that it went well. So that's thank you for attending for those who came. That's a weird news item. Okay, well, this is what happens when you record things in the past for something in the future. That being said, any other news or topics that we want to talk about? Anything else that kind of came up? We can't really talk about anything at Ignite because we haven't been there yet. And there's been no announcements. So there's nothing that we can talk about there.
Great time. I had such a great time.
I had a good time too.
Yeah.
People tell me, yes. It's a little bit rainy because, Chicago, the fall,
It actually may have snowed when we were there.
It could have snowed. I don't know.
It's supposed to.
There was that one time when Tommy was walking, he fell right on his bum because he was slipping on the snow.
Oh, that was hilarious. That time that happened last time.
Talking about things that may probably never will happen. Awesome. All right. Well, with that being said, then we should probably just roll into our mailbag. So today, our topic is just a mailbag, and we're going to talk about tools for citizen developers. Would our reader, Seth, would you mind reading us through our question today?
Sure. If it's a question, starts off great. No real question here. Comma.
All right. Well, we're already on a winner.
Who chose this?
Just a comment on your thinking about Datamarts. Oh, guy, we're in trouble.
Uh-oh.
Wait, doesn't anybody just agree with us?
Does this come from a mirror?
No.
Who's this from?
Okay. I have no idea what Microsoft is up to with these. Nope, not a mirror. But I will say that as a citizen developer / user who has zero input into the development of our BI infrastructure and consequently no access to Fabric or literally any other data warehousing solution, Datamarts have been a real lifesaver. I don't have access to Fabric, so I don't know how Datamarts compare exactly, but for me, Datamarts allow me to build fairly extensive data models with a huge variety of data sources, and then build a bunch of thin reports on top of them. They load quickly and are easy to troubleshoot. Anyway, I thought Datamarts came in for a bit of an undue drubbing in the Kill It or Complete It episode, so just wanted to pop in and defend them. Would I like to have Fabric? Sure. But I actually haven't come up against a single thing you guys have described in the podcast that Datamarts couldn't do. Just putting that out there. Thanks again for everything you're doing, Andrew. And then kind of writes in that he has previously been, I guess, part of the mailbag. So thank you, Andrew, again for this disagreement that we will now discuss and for your previous mailbag submission.
Wow. This is a great question. So one, thank you very much for your question. This is going to be one to unpack a little bit here because we're now talking the break point between, I think, Power BI and what is Fabric moving forward. And so this is potentially an organizational decision and something that may be taken out of your hands. You may not be able to get anything beyond the scope of Datamart. So let's maybe give a little bit of history here, at least how we see it. Power BI is being built. People are still trying to build this architecture of, hey, I have data in source systems. I need to manipulate or shape or create changes on that data. Power Query, either in Power BI or in data flows. Gen 1 actually would be your only way to transform data. So those are your two transforms of data. That's all you could do initially in Power BI. The data flows Gen 1 would save all the files into a file formatted with CSV. It's in the clouds. Or you could use your own storage account if you wanted. So there was some availability to store things, but you were basically relegated to only using Power Query for those things. And I think Datamarts was opened up for Power BI Premium. So premium per user, right? And if you had a P SKU or a premium capacity, you could turn on Datamarts. But Datamarts is not a Fabric-only item. It is a pure Power BI item, and it feels a lot like a SQL server. Is that kind of a fair statement? Anything I missed there about like the history of like how we got here to Datamarts?
No, I think it was the ETL pipe, but also the way to create an extensible model that like was easily queryable and you could build onto like it was the mini warehouse, right? Like in the mix.
I think we had an issue with like, I'm not sure which came out first, but I feel like what am I dropping the name on? Not Semantic. Synapse. I feel like Synapse came out just before Datamarts came out. So I feel like it was like Synapse was released. Synapse was supposed to work well with Power BI, but it was a separate paid thing. And it seemed a little bit too expensive. And so people were like, maybe I won't use it. One of my issues that I think we had here was there was no place to like have a SQL on demand, right? And if we think about like the loading pattern of what we're talking about here, we have data in source systems. We need to transform it and put it somewhere. We need to pick it up again and put it back into a Power BI semantic model. And I think the pattern at the time was a lot around doing it all inside SQL servers. That's because that's what people were used to doing. And Seth, I remember very vividly at one of the MVP summits, you and I were talking about Databricks, and I was like, oh my word, this is going to change how people do things. Because I was like, why do we need the SQL server? I kept having really big pushback against why is the SQL server here? Because it's just reading tables, and it's got to be on all month long just for me to read the tables once a day when I load them in import mode. And I was having a lot of like, this makes no sense to me. And I think that's kind of where Datamarts kind of came in as that SQL serverless part.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I kind of don't. I kind of agree, right? Synaps was the enterprise solution, at least I think a year or 2 years before Datamarts.
Yeah,
but the enterprise side, right? Like, hey, we're going to the cloud with our warehousing solution, et cetera. Datamarts was more, how can we take the enterprise side of things and give it to the business?
Yes.
In a way that they could interact with it. And it was like, I think, yes, amongst the enterprise side conversation, was there a lot of, I think, rapid development and like open opportunities that Databricks brought to the market? 100%.
Yes.
Right. But in the context of where I think, I'm not going to call it frustration, but a little level set of where we typically talk in this podcast is focused on a lot of the areas that we're engaged in, which tends to lean into the enterprise side and space.
Yes.
And I think it's valid that Andrew's pushing, and we should refocus a bit more in what is available to some of the folks in the ecosystem. And I think what he clearly articulated here is like, great guys, love the chat, love what you guys are talking about. I don't have access to it. So this is the solution that people like me, not just me, right?
Yep.
Labeled citizen developers are getting a lot of value out of Datamarts. And then in my mind, I was like, who was it that poo-pooed so hard on Datamarts? Was that you, Tommy?
I think we all played a part. We all contributed, but
I agree.
I'm not sure I poo-pooed it. I just said I wouldn't build anything new in it because I don't think they're going to build anything new. Like, so
with an assumption that we can, that we can leverage the environment,
100%,
right next. Like, and the frustrating part about that, and I'll let you talk, Tommy, in a second. The frustrating part about that is, it's like, in the past, I could understand, right?
Yes.
Like, you got to spool up these Azure services, but it's like, as an organization, like, you not having access is literally just, it's all right next door.
Yes.
Right. Like,
it's a knob now. It's literally a click of a button now to get it up and turn it on.
Yeah. And so this is important from the unpacking point, because I really do want to reiterate what Seth's saying. For two of us here, if I wanted to turn anything on in a Microsoft capacity,
for three of us, all three of us have this ability. Seth answers to no one. If Seth turns on things in Fabric, Seth turns on things in Fabric. Let's be clear here.
Seth is the data czar.
All of us are the data czars of our whatever our world is, right? We can all turn on things whenever we want, however we want. So like, we don't have the limits that organizations put on their people.
And no, you're
point. I love where you're going with this one. Keep going.
Yeah, and you're spot on. So, and we're also MVPs with that nerdy attitude. So we're always going to be trying the latest and greatest.
100%.
So I can't imagine how many people listen to us and we keep saying Jupyter notebooks. Oh my gosh, this Fabric notebook. They're like, yeah.
They're talking about it again.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I can't. And how many of the features? I actually wonder how many of the features we actually talk about. People are like, that's great, but we're still on Pro. We're still like, I have Gen 1 and my company's running on that. That's still the case. And I think it's important to us to think about the world we live in compared to a lot of people. I mean, I'm 5 years or 4 years removed from being in a company where it's like, we need to turn this on. They're like, well, we're not going to because X, Y, and Z. And you're like, okay, I can't play with this. I'm not going to spend my own personal money to do so.
No.
So the solution that Andrew's talking about here, and Dataflow is Gen 1, even if you just take premium per user, right? Not even a premium capacity. I mean, to his point, he used the word lifesaver, and he's not just like, no, it's kind of cool. He's like, no, it's
this runs our core stuff.
This is business critical to what we do. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, yes, I would recommend someone to move forward as much as you can, but that's not always that's not always going to be applicable. That's not always a reality for a lot of people.
You're bringing up a really interesting point here. So that there is no real question here. There is just discussion points around this one. But I think one of the points I'm hearing around the discussion here is, how do you work with an organization who doesn't understand the value of what your team is producing and therefore doesn't put the money in the right places? And what I mean by this is, if you think about what we're doing here, there's a certain amount of budget that's being allocated to what we're going to do in Power BI. And we're saying at this level, again, whatever this organization is, hey, we've decided that premium per user is the thing for us. $20 or now coming April 1st will be, again, the weirdest date ever, $24 per user. So at $24 per user, your organization is finding enough value from what you're producing to say, let's just do that. Let's just make it $24 a user. You get all the premium things of Power BI. Datamarts just show up. You can now have this full... I mean, really what this is a full SQL server that's now inside Fabric. So do data flows, load data to tables somewhere, get it into a SQL server. Does Datamarts do stored procedures or something?
No, it's more, I think, just access to...
It's just table access things.
Query the tables in ways you can't do with data flows, right?
And you can do views inside a Datamart. Is that a correct statement? You can tell how little I actually use Datamarts because I don't know these features of Datamarts. I'm not sure. Might have to Google that one. Maybe Tommy can Google that one in real time.
Yeah. I don't think, are there stored procedures? I'm 95% confident it's not there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think maybe stored procedures are not there, but maybe views are. So tables and views, maybe? Is that something? But I remember when, so I know the feature of this Datamarts came out of Charles Webb. That was the team that was doing it. And Charles was describing, he's like, hey, I got this really cool thing. Let's talk about this thing. And he kind of described this whole merge of analysis services and SQL and kind of being the same thing, all the same item here. And it was really, I got to be honest, it was very intriguing to me, but I'm like, I'm getting the vibe that they're taking the analysis services engine and the SQL engine, and they're kind of really merging them together in a very weird way that was like, okay, we're going to give you one UI that lets you jump between the two different engines, basically a SQL engine and analysis services, even though it runs on the same machine. And so the whole Datamarts was very intriguing to me. Me personally was like, oh, but I have my data flows Gen 1. I don't need that. Why do I need to do all that data engineering? Why do I need that? Again, it was more of what I'm comfortable with. I was more comfortable just doing things in Power BI. I wasn't as comfortable inside SQL. And I'm seeing the same effect now in Fabric. I go into companies that have a lot of SQL knowledge. They all want to start up with the data warehouse, and they want to run store procedures. They want to run SQL statements. They want to make views. This is a place where people are comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. In no way am I trying to disagree. I'm just saying that there's a comfort that your organization has about the skills that you've hired. And so Datamarts, I think, met that need for that SQL developer skill that needed to be brought to Power BI because it's a data skill.
Can I challenge you to think a little more open than just Datamarts here? Because I'm assuming
I'm only thinking about Datamarts.
Okay,
that's it.
Think about what was part of the tool belt for Andrew or someone
Yes.
in this position, right?
Sure.
If you're using premium per user, think of the solution. They're probably already using GenFlow data flows. I'm assuming I would make a very good assumption here. I feel that Andrew and his
they have to be using Gen 1. Gen 2 doesn't exist inside.
They're using this as mission critical. I'm not saying they're somewhat using this. I'm saying that that's part of the workflow. So
got it.
It's not just Datamarts, but it's going to be data flows, Gen 1,
yep.
right?
I hope, yes.
And a company can run on this. It just because you're not on Fabric, you can have citizen developers utilize these. I don't want to call them older tools because we know that the technology is always going to run faster than the business. Yeah,
but it's still in preview. It's been out. I understand. But for 2 years now, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years.
Stop the company though.
They never. It's still in preview. So the tag of preview means unsupported by Microsoft. If something doesn't work, they're not going to support it. There's less help.
CTO knows that.
What was that?
Do you think the CTO knows that? I bet you this team runs.
I don't know. But okay, good point. Going back to what I was saying earlier around this camp of like, okay, does the business really understand and is aware of what, Andrew's doing? Is it right? Yeah. What Andrew's doing. And if Andrew said to the leadership, say, hey, look, guys, we're using this thing. It's called Datamarts. It's working for us. All of our major certified reports is running on data flows, Datamarts. We're happy.
Yeah.
FYI, leadership, this thing's in preview, and FYI, this is not supported by Microsoft, and it hasn't been for 2 years. And I don't see it getting any new features here in the near term. I wonder what that leadership conversation would be like. And I doubt that
Tableau.
But Tommy, to your point though, I don't think I would argue that leadership is not acknowledging all the maybe potential or knows about, hey, it just works.
Sure.
The report shows up, it's happy, everything's going good, no problem.
Let me ask you a question, Mike.
Sure.
If you're Andrew and you
I'm looking for a new company.
Back off all of your experience, right?
Yeah.
And leadership, and you're running reports for an organization. Workload is way high, right?
Sure.
And you now are presented with, I could go build things separate and outside of Datamarts, or I could take this preview feature and save 40-50% of my time.
Yeah, you're going to take it.
Right. So, like, to make an argument that you would want to go pull that forward, even though, Mike, you're not validating that with leadership. Are you doing that?
I mean, I don't. So in my former self, if you talk to me before, I do a lot of consulting. Right. If you talk to me in like year 1, year 2 of consulting, I probably would have said, Microsoft has been, my story would have been, Microsoft is pretty good about putting things into preview and getting them out. Because I think up until when Datamart showed up, most things kind of came into preview. It would kind of live a little bit and then it would get kicked out into an actual thing. And the whole idea was like, it's preview because it's not going to live there forever. That was the point. And I think if I looked at the track history of what Microsoft was doing in just Power BI earlier on, a lot of things would go to preview. Goals was a preview for a bit, and then it kind of like rolled on and did its own thing. Like, so I would at the time, I would not have had enough input or information in my mind to say it's not going to stay preview forever. I wouldn't have known that. So I think in that regard, I would have said, hey, look, we're a little early on the curve here. Let's just do it. This is going to add a lot of value for us. It's already in a space that we understand. Let's do it. So
sure, but you're saying that to yourself.
Yeah, I'm saying that to myself.
Saying that as a
nobody is telling you how to do your job. You're just in charge of building all the reports.
Right.
I'm trying to build reports. I would have said, yes, let's do it. Microsoft will eventually make it go. It will be going, GA.
So that's where we're at, though.
But then I'm looking at it now, and so again, if I had to look at fast forward to what I've learned now.
Nope. I said
I have to.
You can't. No, you can't.
Why can't I?
Right, because you're giving recommendations in the context of this is Andrew's situation based on what he's describing.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
I'm saving I'm producing more value to the business by using this feature that is in preview, and this is why we talked about that in the whole episode, and why I leaned in a little bit, because I think the vast majority of people who have been using Microsoft products have been shooting preview features out into their production environments. And this is where it's been like, to your point, well, I mean, typically it's on this cadence, it goes preview, and then we do these things. And that's where I was just like, I think we need to commit it, right? We need to get it out the door, or we need to kill it. Because if this is the mentality that is been pushed out there now, and I think is the responsibility of Microsoft to go back and clean some of this stuff up so that people don't find themselves in situations where, oh my gosh, we've implemented a feature that's extremely valuable for us as a business, and then you're going to be, you let it go for years and then go, yep, nope, we're not going to support that. Because all you're doing is like you're building bigger and bigger and bigger solutions on top of preview things, right? And then it's going to be disruptive. So to my point here, and not to harp, but I'm saying, like, you're not going to preemptively just bring this up as like the core part of your solutions and say, you have to give me Fabric because I built all this stuff on preview, right? Like you're going to say that only when Microsoft says we're killing it, right? Because then it's not really a solution. Then it's like, hey, we've got this fantastic solution I've been using, right? It's saved me tons of time. It's allowed me to put out reports, X faster than I did before. They're discontinuing the solution that we did, which I was also doing cost savings because it fell under the licensing we had. We didn't need to grow, et cetera, et cetera. But now we don't have an option. Now we have to go the Fabric route, and I have a lot of rework to do to get onto this new platform. I don't think that's something you preemptively say, like, hey, I wouldn't build a bunch of previews.
Two major things. Man, I think maybe I've been having coffee since 4:30, but I am fired up about this. So
Tommy, you would like Datamarts. I could see this. Tommy,
no, it's the confines of which a person's working in, and because I've been in these shoes where solution needs to be done. The CTO is not the one who knows everything about Power BI, and
care about results.
We care about results, and you have to work within the confines that you have. So you're going to use the preview feature because guess what? It works. And it's been working for this situation, and I guarantee you others. And if you go in that conversation, okay, we need Fabric. You go, how long is that going to take? What kind of migration is that? Oh, by the way, you're going to have 20 tickets behind. Where are those resources coming from? Because if you're going to make that type of migration, and again, I don't want to blame anyone for saying you started using the preview feature, you dug your own grave. That's not the case because
it is. It literally says on every single preview feature. It literally says in every single preview feature.
No,
be careful. This may or may not live on. It may all the documentation. Anything preview.
I'm not saying if
call out.
Guys, I'm saying if you're going to make the migration.
I know. I'm with you. I get it.
People are in positions where they're like, we need a solution. I don't care how you do it. Oh, by the way, you have no time to do it. And I mean, that's why data flows can be so, I almost use it, screwed up. That's why there are some solutions that can be convoluted and don't have great ground because people are already flying by the seat of their pants as it is in our industry in what we do. So the citizen developer tools with Datamarts, with Data Flows Gen 1, it'd be great if we had lake houses and warehouses and ponds and, rivers and whatever you want your data to flow through. But that ain't the case for a lot of people from resources, from skill, and from money. And again, go in that room, tell them we need Fabric because we're in a preview feature. They're going to say, okay, how long is it going to take? And especially if you're already running a ton of things on it, they're either going to look at you and go, can we get Tableau, or we need to bring in a consultant in, or whatever the case is, but they're not going to go, spend the next month.
No one's ever going to pick Tableau over Power BI. I'll just say that right now.
Someone's going to say it.
That's not going to happen.
What they're talking about.
It's a dead conversation.
It's a dead, that one. Okay. Now other tools, maybe,
fine.
But Tableau, it's not, that's not the, I hear of no one saying, wow, we're going to rip out our Power BI and go to Tableau.
Strategy. If you're going to bring up, we need to move away from a preview feature. This is something with your boss before you go in a room, say, this is something we need to plan out and we need time for, because working on this migration means you're not working on other things. And this is a huge issue with a lot of companies.
Couple reaction points here. Like I'm not disagreeing with you guys. I think you guys are right about, like, sometimes we just made the decision. I think based on our prior knowledge, we were under the assumption that most things that went into preview would eventually turn into real solutions. It would go GA. It wouldn't be a problem. I'm also thinking about this too as well from the Microsoft side. What is Microsoft's motive here around all of this Datamarts thing, right? The whole thing was keep people inside Power BI longer. The reason that's under premium per user, because you're paying more money for whatever the compute you're using is to run that thing. So if they've learned, so maybe at some point in here, they're going to take things that they've learned from Fabric and they'll maybe pull something down and maybe give, Datamarts a minor upgrade. More than likely what I think will happen, again, this is just me reading based on the past experiences of Microsoft. Again, this is Michael looking at what Microsoft has done historically, as opposed to what they may do in the future. I don't know. But looking historically, it feels like they would say, hey, we're going to start deprecating Datamarts. We're going to give you some sort of tool to migrate you or help you migrate most of what you're doing. So the only way they can ever announce that they're going to go out of I guess the reason why I'm saying this is, listen for this. This is the point you need to listen for. Listen for when Microsoft says, hey, we've given you a tool to migrate. Anytime they say that, that means there's some plan of them deprecating something, I think. Or there's a better way they have figured out and they want to get you off of the old thing and into the new thing. So when I hear things like that, I'm even hearing some language around, how to upgrade your upgrade your patterns from Data Flows Gen 1 to Data Flows Gen 2. At the last Fabric conference, I was in some of those sessions where I was helping teach, like, hey, here's a pattern you used to do in Data Flows Gen 1. Here's the upgraded pattern you'd want to use in Data Flows Gen 2. They're not deprecating Gen 1 in any way. They're just saying, we want you to start using something else. And I think depending on how things have turned on and who's turned on what items, in whatever, if you try to turn off Datamarts right now, I think there's going to be a huge lashback from the community. There's going to be companies that say, look, we use this. You can't turn it off. But there is, I don't see right now any path where they're making more improvements to it to make it more in alignment to a lightweight thing of Fabric. It's not getting any more love. It just seems to be like, okay, it's good enough. And again, to our point when we talked about kill it or complete it, just complete it. Just say it's done and just get it through GA and just say, we're not going to add any more features to it. This is it. This is what you get.
Yeah. But I think that's the completed part of that conversation. While we see that there are potentially better solutions that Fabric provides now.
Yes.
Andrew makes a really good point, right? Just because there are better solutions, right, on the other side of a toggle, doesn't mean that, Datamarts doesn't need a decision point of it could go GA, at which point it's serving the purpose of what businesses needed to do for that PPU license.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that there aren't better solutions.
Yeah.
Right. And it also doesn't mean that there's not value. But I do agree with your point that the additional investment in that area probably won't be as accelerated as what you'll find in Fabric.
Yes. They're giving us a year and a half to get off Power BI Premium. Wasn't that 2026 is getting deprecated? So if they're not there, I don't think I'm getting a blog today saying Datamarts will be unavailable after the Thanksgiving.
You abbreviated a lot of that comment. They're giving us a year to get off a premium tier or premium tier, the P SKUs. The P SKUs. I want you to migrate away from P SKU to F SKU.
Isn't it getting deprecated in 2026? Wasn't that the date?
No, 2020. Well, deprecate. No, 2025 is in mid 25 is when if you renew.
If you renew,
it would be your last. So deprecated meaning no other licenses provided, no other.
And buy it again.
P SKU would on their end be able to be shut down. 26.
Right. And that's when so it's still 6 months of time available before.
But think about it.
No longer available.
But think about it. P SKU to F SKU, everything you can do in the P SKU is available in the. But this is my point, though. My point is,
Andrew's like, I know, I agree.
I know, I get it, understand. But the premium per user, that's what's missing here. But the P SKU to F SKU story is Microsoft's like, look, we're not going to give it to you. By the way, you're going to get that everything you could do and more with the Fabric SKU. And by the way, if you're already using premium, here's all the Fabric things anyway. So that's a very easy migration pattern. It definitely does take some time. You'll need to take things down for a weekend, turn on a SKU and flip it over. But okay, fine. There probably is some testing organizations need to do to turn over their workspaces from the P SKUs to the F SKUs. And albeit, fine. It is what it is.
Anyone listening disagrees with you on wanting to do that.
But the equivalent of that lives in Datamarts is not the same. So that's where my point here is, if Andrew said, look, Andrew, let's do this, let's move you over. And maybe Andrew, again, this question came out a little bit before. I'm assuming this question came out before they gave the price increase. I would re-ask the question back to Andrew and say, hey, Andrew, send us another comment in the podcast. Does the price increase of pro users to $14 or the premium price per user going from $20 to $24, does that change your mind at all? Is there a break point? Again, I think there's a situation here where if you're on a small enough organization where you're just getting things to happen, it doesn't make sense for you to go up to a Fabric SKU. But I'm thinking now maybe there's potentially a need for rolling up to this one. And I think to me, one of the major breakpoints of whether or not I can go from where I'm at in premium per user to Fabric is, what is the size of my semantic models? Because that's the one knob that I can't get with a lower Fabric SKU unless I'm paying a lot of money for Fabric. Let me just unpack this a little bit here for you when I'm thinking here. The premium per user gives me 100 gigabyte size memory models, which you can't really shove 100 gigs in there anyway. So if your model goes above 1 gig, you're out of pro, you're into premium per user. The top end of premium per user is 100 gigs. It's a huge gap. To get 100 gigs in a model, you're looking at a Ep.375. That's the same size machine that you're going to get a premium per user model. That's 100 gigs. So think about that. Like that is the size model. Like that's the size machine. That's an expensive machine to run per month to get up to 100 gig size model. So if you're in that lower end tier of like my model is 5 gigs, so I'm seeing a lot of things where companies are jumping from 1 gig to like 1.5 gigs, or they're getting their models get a little bit larger, and they're like, hey, we either need to tune our models, take data out of them so they continue to work, or we go up to a bigger premium per user SKU. And that potentially is a big jump in cost for them because they're going from a handful of users that are already premium per user and they're going up to premium per user. So to me, there's a pretty big step between those. And that's my main consideration for where I would say, yeah, you don't really want Fabric because Fabric will give you a little bit larger data sets, 5, 6, 10, 15, 25. Like there's going to be other steps there that are going to give you more gigs in those models, but that's maybe my point. And so like if you're using Datamarts and you've got really big models that you're doing things with, yes, you're not going to be incentivized to move to Fabric for that reason because you won't get the same performance.
Let me pose a question to you guys, and let's take this situation that Andrew's in, and let's say Fabric's not the option because we know Fabric's always the answer, and like I said, I would recommend it, but
it is the way.
Okay.
It is the way. It is going to be the way. So we all know that. But for this situation, if you were in Andrew's shoes, if you were in the situation with the team that you're already utilizing Datamarts, are you trying to move off it right now, or are you keeping business as usual? Are you trying to push for something else, a database or some other service, or something that maybe is still not cost intensive or not a migration, but
no, I think
back up. Yeah.
I think the way he's presenting it is in such a way that he's saying he's leveraging this and finding success in it and has solutions built on it. And no, I don't think he's proactively looking to switch up infrastructure. And nor should he. Would I?
Yeah.
Would I proactively blow up my world for infrastructure and slow down the development of what seems to be a fast dev org, right? Like where you've been part of that, Tommy. The expectations of you turning around reports really fast. How much of that would involve like, yeah, let me bake in another day so I can like redo my infrastructure. And I think the other part of this is there are no other options for him at the moment that he sees. Now I want to push into that a little bit after we get through this question, but I think no, you're not just picking up an infrastructure or change, kind of thing when you built this solution and it's working really well. Like your goal is to bring insights to the business. It's not just to play around with the infrastructure.
Mike, same question to you.
I'm trying to unpack what we're doing here on like the size of things. So I feel like what's happening is Andrew's in a place where someone else is making some of those larger Power BI administration conversations, and it's less around a center of excellence that's actually making these decisions. Because I've seen this before, where there's the decision point. If Andrew had the decision, right? If Andrew was making the calls, he would have said, "Let's just." I feel like the reason we got the Datamart to become the first time was because Andrew said, "I'm going to be looking at this cool new thing. This is in preview. Let's check this out. Oh wow, look, I am making and this is what we talked about in our other podcast around leaders, high performing individuals. Like he came in, he said, "Look, we have a problem. Here's a Datamart. This solves our problem. Look what I built. I built this thing. This thing is now adding value. Okay, great. We're going to invest more in Datamarts and build more in it. Great. Everyone's happy. Stuff's working. He gets things done quickly. It's SQL. Great. We're all happy." In the same way, he would have done the same thing for Fabric, but he can't. This is where I'm like, the point here is he would be that individual to go ahead and do this, to pull things to the next level for his organization. But because the decision doesn't live in his hands, it lives at a higher level in the organization. That decision point is being pulled away from his hands, and it's not allowing him to like step in and do the innovation that he needs to do to keep the solution current with what stuff that's not in preview. So I don't know how you handle this conversation, but it feels to me like there's a resistance level at the top level of the leadership of the company that is causing some pushback, which is inhibiting him from exploring the next thing.
So I wouldn't go that far. I would say or there just hasn't been the engagement across the teams. or
And
there
I
or there
would
is
Potentially.
say
none,
the same.
right?
Yes.
So
They're not-
he's in a silo
Okay.
of building solutions and not integrated with that team for whatever
Well,
reason.
let me challenge. I'll say this is a great opportunity because Datamarts came out well before Fabric, right? Or was it the same year?
It was well. I know
No,
that
it was the year before. It was the
it
year
was
before. Datamart
yeah, but
came out a year before, right?
I guarantee you what was happening was Datamarts got built. It was getting started, and Microsoft made a pivot at some point. So
yeah, but
somewhere in here, somewhere in this process, Microsoft said, "Hey,
Not
we're gonna bring more SQL-like features to Power BI with Datamarts." And then someone at the leadership level said, "No, wait a minute. The real place here is how we're getting people are eating our lunch in like Delta lake houses." And so someone at the leadership level said, "You know, wait a minute. We need to also pivot and say, look, the Vertipack engine and Delta tables actually can play really well together. So what we're going to do is we're going to respin this and say we now need to have a bigger vision of what we're talking about for data platform, and now we need to bring this new format to me. That's the change that happened here because
yes.
whether you're not your data warehouse,
We know
or
what Microsoft's saying. I'm saying for the situation where people are building data marts.
but I'm saying that's the sand that shifted underneath these people's feet.
Yeah,
No, but
and
you're
so
you're saying that, but I don't agree with it, right? Because the sand is that they're bringing enterprise tooling into Fabric. We talked about how do you bring a citizen developer into an ecosystem that they don't understand, and you're pretending that transition is just super seamless, and it's I don't know. A little bit of pushback in that regard.
I understand your
pushback. It's not
pushback.
worth it. That it's not worth it. But Datamarts is a very straightforward way of like, hey, we're going to add this additional thing for you and get a lot out of it. Do you
Not
know
disagreeing?
That's a big point because I mean, honestly, when Dataflows Gen 1 came out in 17, that was kind of my first introduction to the data engineering kind of world, and one of the first introduction to like how do things actually work when it comes to kind of shifting data through a process. Because that's the first time that Medallion came up to me, because it was like, okay, we're not just dealing with this data set. Okay, what's this world now that they're talking about loading data in and then transforming it? So for a lot of people, the tools also introduced to them some of the skills. But here's what I'm saying: this is an opportunity. If the same question I guess asked you, would you change gears or would you stay as as the ship sailing? Well, if Datamarts were being built pre-Fabric and everything's working, I may be happy, but I'm probably waking up every other week going Datamarts in preview, because there, with all of the growth of Fabric at this point, to me, this is an opportunity where I would challenge that a lot of the features that they're making in Fabric are kind of citizen developer. I mean, a lake house is so friendly to create, and you also can use data flows where there needs to be the slow conversation, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen over the next 2 months where you're going to just shift everything over. But I don't know if I'm in this situation where my company's running on these data marts and I haven't seen an update for a data marts, and that's where I would get nervous. I haven't seen a blog article, a Google search, anything by Microsoft with the words data mart in 2 years, let's say, probably. I'm getting nervous. I'm getting some beads of sweat at this point. And it would be very hard to continue the gears without saying, hey, to leadership or the bosses, they may not be pushing back. And that's where I'll argue. I don't think they're pushing back. We don't want Fabric. They might be aware of the value. They not be aware, they know there's a cost involved, sure. But this is a great opportunity to go, look, we're playing in a playground that is going to close down. We don't know when, but this is not Microsoft's path. So what are we going to do?
So these are really good points, because I think this would morph into recommendations that I think we would have for Andrew, right?
I think so.
We don't talk about all of the things in Fabric or easy replacements for Datamarts just to talk about them, right? They're much more extensible solutions. That's where all the time and development is gone, and they're enterprise tools.
Yes,
so
I agree with that.
Business as it stands, especially when you're in the burner, which is like, I don't know if you have development processes, right? Or is it just the, Kanban board that never ends, where business is just throwing report requests your way, and that's the life he leads, and like that's a rough life. It's rough. They don't care. They care about results. They don't care about infrastructure. They don't care about how you built stuff. What they would notice is if you deviated from that to go fix a bunch of things for infrastructure, right? So I think Andrew needs to understand the nuance of preview that we pointed out, right? The lack of engagement or feature updates in Datamarts, and what does that speak to his solutions? And I think the nudge here from my perspective would be, I think now is the time that you start to engage the other technical team or the other leader and present a solution for a potential better future, or one that you know is more sustainable. Because if it's still in preview, if there's been no features and all this other stuff is happening that we're talking about in Fabric, there's a compelling reason why you would want to go in that direction, because it
Agree.
scales.
Yeah,
right.
agree.
So what are the points that win that argument?
So I know exactly where you're going with this one. I'm going to just give you maybe one point that I would look for if I was in Andrew's shoes. I would try to educate myself, either reading documents or getting into things as much as I can about what Fabric is capable of, and potentially even some of the differences around what you're doing today to what Fabric is doing. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm listening for when the business comes to me with a new request. Hey, we have this API. It'd be really helpful if we could add that data to my thing. Or, hey, we've got this new non-SQL server. It's a third-party service that lives in the cloud somewhere. How would we best connect to it? And you know full well, yeah, I could probably do that in Dataflows Gen 1. Yeah, I could probably land the data in our Datamart. But in my opinion here is, I would try to know enough to say, okay, we could do this with Datamarts. But what you're really asking for is, we need to land these small files somewhere, or we need to use these other API calls to go get some data. And it's actually really difficult to make an API call with Dataflows Gen 1. We have to go get a token. It doesn't really work very well with it. Like, it's just got a lot of friction. It'd be really nice, organization, if you want this new data, please let me spin up a single resource group or a single workspace that would let me experiment with getting that data in using a more Fabric-based solution. So I guess all I'm trying to say is, that was more of the example. Maybe I should have stated my statement here first. I'm looking for use cases where I think Fabric would fit better than what I have in Dataflows. And I think if I'm looking at it, I'm saying things that are more important for me to bring them to Fabric are API calls, things that are talking to third-party data systems. Those are good opportunities to build those solutions inside Fabric, and they're easier to implement than doing what you've been doing in Dataflows Gen 1 and in Datamarts, my opinion. That's where I would think you would land. So listening for business use cases where Fabric fits better than what you currently have. Then when the need, right, when the business comes in and says, we really need this has really got to be here. We've just purchased this amazing software, or whatever the thing is, and we can't get data out. I'm like, great. I now need you to untie my hands a little bit. At least trust me. I got you to Datamarts. Trust me that I'll be able to get you through Fabric. Trust me as my team. We'll figure it out. Let us work with you, or we're going to go find someone, or whatever the situation is. But do something that helps the user, get them, push them past that barrier of. To me, the big blocker is, what can I do? How do I convince leadership to give me just a little bit of Fabric so I can prove the value? That's all I'm going to say.
And my closing thought here, I'll really simplify this. I think I have the easiest answer here. I'm writing a Christmas card to Satya, and say, you're not really supporting Datamarts in the future, right? If not, please send a Christmas card to my company, and I'm going to ask Satya to write a card that says, "Season's greeting. Your current solution will be deprecated in the next 2 years." That's what I'm going to do, because the point I'm trying to make here is really that we know it's in preview. We know where Microsoft's focusing their time. To your point too, like, I'm starting that conversation to, like, just so you know, our solution's working great now, but we haven't seen an update in 2 years, and that's usually doesn't, like, based on what we know with research, that doesn't bode well for products with Microsoft if we don't see updates.
See, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's a compelling enough argument for leadership to make the decision to open up Fabric for them.
Slow conversation.
I would argue neither is yours, because you're saying that it's difficult to do something, but it's not impossible in the current solutions. So
sure.
Leading with a technical solution that benefits Andrew in terms of implementation is rarely going to move the needle or say, yeah, we should spend some more cash in this direction, or we should pivot on infrastructure. I personally would think that while the developers are technically thinking in those directions all the time, I want to be more efficient. I want to,
hopefully,
do
maybe
do
not.
better things for the business, etc.
Yeah.
I think the play is, like I said, engaging with the team or leaders where your pitch is on improving the data solutions for the business. And how do you do that, right? Like, hey,
Okay.
here's what we're building in the Fabric ecosystem, right? Don't bring them along for the ride. What can we do? There are these things called domains, right? I'm in a domain. I'm in an area of the business. There's this data mesh fabric. Fabric is part of data mesh. The principles behind there are we as the subject matter experts or the builders in our area of the business can build solutions that make our data work more useful for the wider organization. So what I want to do, or what I'm proposing, being Andrew, is I want to build solutions that are accessible to the BI infrastructure or other teams. And we have that capability if we invest in this direction. So I've got all of this stuff that works really, really well for the business. I'm able to produce a lot of value and turn reports around, not suggesting that I don't do that. But from an R&D perspective, I think this is the direction that we start to head because all these capabilities live here. And the net of that approach and proposal is you're saying, I'm actually going to take more load off of that central BI team and the organization, and I'm going to provide be the owner of all of this data related to this area of the business. So it's kind of a quid pro quo, but you're also setting yourself apart in that not only you're just building good solutions and extending and developing reports, you're also opening the door to get the access you need to start playing with these bigger things. And long term, right, taking advantage of all the stuff we talk about all the time and why Fabric's so cool, right? But the pitch, I think, and where businesses go, well, hot dang, like Andrew's presenting something that with minimal cash investment, he can prove out, or we can start to work with the BI teams. And now all the data and work that he's been doing is going to be in this place where we can start to, certify or govern on a higher level. I wouldn't, if somebody from the business pitched me that idea, I'd be like, hell yeah. You're going to go 100%. Now you're part of my conversation line. You do all this work for me and then just give me access to the data that you're curating for stuff. Dude, that's a win-win. How much do you need per month? You know what I'm saying? And that's where I think I would recommend, a lean in, because to Tommy's point, right? We don't know. If it goes GA, you got no problems, right? If it stays in preview and it's not getting, updated, how long do you have on the legs of that? No reason why you can't get out in front of things and start to leverage the stuff that would extend and provide a better solution outside of what Datamarts does.
All right, so Andrew, you need to try all three approaches and let us know which one works the best. So I think we have 3 solid approaches here.
I would agree with that one. We'll figure things out slowly as we kind of who's going to win. What's we want a question in about 6 months back from Andrew around what the answer is. What did you try?
Try this first.
And do you have coverage?
Shut down.
Shut down. Tommy was an idiot. Yeah. So
by the time I got to the third,
it was actually exactly
talking to me.
Awesome. Well, with that, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your ears in this conversation. I think this was a very good conversation, very relevant. Hopefully this helps you think through your things around Datamarts and other elements inside your Fabric environment, and maybe conversations you should be having with the organization to turn on or try to get access to other features that are not available to you yet. That's a thing to think about. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us in Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Share with a friend or a colleague, because we do this for free for you guys. If you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question, And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.